Hi, this is Jeff Glor from CBS News, and you're wasting your precious time with Tim Graham and friends.
CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
I'm Bucky Gleason, and you're listening to Tim Graham and Friends. Tim Graham and his friends?
Welcome to an FTFO edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. And by FTFO, I mean freak the F out. That seems to be what a lot of folks are doing in the aftermath of the Matt Milano news. He is going to require bicep surgery and perhaps miss the entire season. I know Adam Schefter has reported that maybe he'll be back by December. We don't know that. Maybe not. But let's say he's back first thing in December. It's the greatest surgery and rehab and everything's fine. That still would mean that he's missed about 25 straight games for the Bills, going back to London when he had the broken leg. And Jonah, everybody is freaking the F out. Well, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of folks seem to think that this is pretty devastating. I, for one, do not. And I'll give a couple of reasons why. Yes, Matt Milano is a fabulous player. He has been one of the great players of the Bills post-drought era, one of the guys who's helped pull them from the drought and turn them into a perennial AFC East champion, a perennial Super Bowl contender. But the two quick things, Jonah, and then I'll get your thoughts. It is not as though the Bills will play with only 10 defenders until Matt Milano gets back, which it seems as though a lot of people think. There are replacements available. The Bills do like what they have in Dorian Williams, and we can get into the depth chart. I do have some thoughts on that, and we can break it down. There have actually been changes on the Bills depth chart from just last week. They've rearranged some things. I'll be happy to break those down for you from the opener against the Chicago Bears to Saturday night's preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that was even before the announcement today about Matt Milano's injury and how serious it was. So Dorian Williams, he's a pretty good player, and the Bills like him quite a bit. There's a reason that the Bills, even with their battered linebackers, they're smallish linebackers. They're smaller than prototypical linebackers, did not go out and bolster that position with veteran help. I mean, look, the Bills are preparing and have prepared, need to prepare. It would be malpractice if they didn't prepare for the prospect of not having a Matt Milano, given his injury history, given that Terrell Bernard was unable to finish the season last year. But they like Dorian Williams. And so obviously it's going to be his turn in the spotlight. But then the other reason why I think it's a little bit too dramatic to freak out about Matt Milano's absence is that we don't know that he was going to return to All-Pro Matt Milano anyway. We don't even know how much of whether he'd be playing all the snaps come the regular season. He is still very much recovering from his injured leg, from his broken leg. And you could see it out there, maybe still working around a little gingerly, maybe not going for, I mean, we hadn't really seen him in a full go situation yet. He did not play against the Steelers in that opener. We've only seen him in practice without full contact, without anything resembling a game situation. So I do think it was a pretty aggressive assumption, but it's what we do when we're imagining what this loss could mean for the Bills defense, to just assume that Matt Milano was going to revert to all-pro Matt Milano form, the same Matt Milano that was heading into London and not the one who suffered a nasty leg injury and had been unproven in his return. But again, even if he were to return to all-pro Matt Milano standards, I just am not so fearful as that the drop-off is the same as going down to A.J. Klein coming off his couch at the end of last season. Dorian Williams is entering his second year in the NFL. Terrell Bernard was entering his second season in the NFL last year when they gave him the green dot, even though he'd missed all the preseason games and had been hurt, and Terrell Bernard worked out quite well. Now, granted, it would be nice if Bernard and Milano would be healthy. It would be exciting to see what these two guys could do. But I, for one, am not ready to say that the Bills have suffered a catastrophic defensive loss with Matt Milano being put on the shelf, even if it's for the entire season. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with the overall sentiment. Using words like devastating and catastrophic are probably overstating the overall impact it'll be on the Bills defense and the Bills season. But it is a significant loss to, if not the best player on the defense, one of the very best players on the entire team, the third highest cap hit on the team, a key leader and a key player. And if you were optimistic about the Bills' chances, especially their ceiling and their top end chances of really contending this year, one of the big reasons for optimism was getting Matt Milano back in the lineup and how that could improve upon where the defense was for most of last season, and having Matt Milano play next to Terrell Bernard. That was something that Bills fans and Bills supporters were really excited about. You broke down a lot of the reasons why maybe it doesn't play out exactly like that, especially early on in the season, and maybe why the Bills played pretty good defense without Matt Milano for 2/3 of last season last year. It really broke down when they had even more linebacker injuries and they had to get to A.J. Klein and practice squad call-ups and really third string type linebackers. It took more than the Matt Milano injury for the Bills to reach that level of need at the position and struggle in that playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And maybe a little bit of time off healing from this bicep surgery gives Matt Milano more time to heal and recover and strengthen his legs from the time that he missed a year ago. I think there's a bright side you could look at where Dorian Williams develops well in his place, similar to how Terrell Bernard did last year, maybe not quite as effective and quite as much of a playmaker as Terrell Bernard. I don't think you can expect that back-to-back years from third-round picks. But if he's a suitable replacement, then you get a healthy Matt Milano back in December. I think he will return this season. I think if you look at the standard recovery times for this bicep surgery, he will at some point come off the injured reserve and play again. I don't know if he'll be 100% all-pro Matt Milano at that point in time. But, there's a bright side way to look at it where the Bills have three good linebackers at the end of the season, and this injury helped them develop Dorian Williams into that third piece, and Matt Milano comes in, healthy and fresh and refreshed come playoff time. It could work out in the end. From a broader perspective, though, I do think it's disappointing, and it's different injuries and different career trajectories, but it reminds me a lot of Shane Conlon, who was a Pro Bowl, all-pro type defender for the Bills defense in the late 80s, early 90s, and then he suffered injuries year after year, and each time he came back, he wasn't quite the same player, and so his career kind of ended due to injuries. And I don't think this is by any means a career-ending injury to Matt Milano, but it's similar to the Tre'Davious White situation where he had one serious leg injury, and the Bills were very supportive about bringing him back and getting Tre'Davious White back to be the number one corner. A second injury in the span of about 2 years or 3 seasons, and that was the end of Tre'Davious White's time in Buffalo and Tre'Davious White's time as a cornerstone of the Bills defense. And that could be the case with Matt Milano here soon if he continues to have long-term injuries to different body parts as he ages. He's already 30 years old. So I think long-term, the ceiling of what a Matt Milano-led defense could be might be a little bit lower than it was before this arm injury at practice 2 days ago.
Yeah, he's not young. He's one of the longest tenured Bills players. Only 1 year less than the longest tenured, and that is Reed Ferguson, the long snapper. Milano and Dawkins are the last 2 draft picks on this team that weren't taken by Brandon Beane. This was the Doug Whaley draft right before the Bills fired him, and Reed Ferguson, of course, being a undrafted player. But that's about it in terms of the Whaley administration. Not even about it. That is it, right? I'm not missing anybody. You mentioned the salary cap situation. That is the one that really does hurt, because this isn't the National Hockey League where somebody going on injured reserve gives you a credit towards your salary cap so you can go out and find somebody else. But again, the Bills think that they have their Matt Milano replacement on their roster already. Dorian Williams is a 3rd-round pick from last year. He played in every game, all 19 games. Now, granted, most of it was on special teams, but he did play 20% of the defensive snaps. He played 211 defensive snaps. He got 2 starts over the course of the season. That was both in the regular season. Played 61% of the special team snaps. He's been on the field, and by all accounts, he's had a pretty strong camp. His summer and throughout the offseason, back in minicamp and OTAs, he got a lot of reps because Matt Milano wasn't full go. And so he's been out there. He's been working with Terrell Bernard. I think that, look, I'm not predicting that Dorian Williams is going to just be a plug and play guy. There will be some growing pains. He's known as a guy who can run, a guy who can hit, perhaps has some liabilities when it comes to pass coverage. But as his instincts evolve, hopefully that they do for the Bills' sake, then I think that we're probably going to see still a very good defense. Let's keep in mind that Sean McDermott, since he's arrived, he's lost a lot of, finger quotes, important players. And the defense hasn't really missed a beat much, with the exception of, and you referred to it, that game against Kansas City in the playoffs in which they were so injury-riddled. Christian Benford was out. Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano were both out. A.J. Klein was in there. Terrell Dotson was also playing linebacker while banged up. Von Miller, of course, just wasn't giving them anything. They'd lost Tre'Davious White and, fill in the blank. They've had long periods where they've not had Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. And the defense continues to rise to the occasion. So I will say that my one concern regarding Matt Milano is that he was such a pillar of the defense in the stability standpoint, with Hyde and Poyer both gone and the Bills going to the 2 new safeties. And within that tradition, having Bernard and Milano both out there together really would have helped whatever safety tandem was back there, Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin, or whether it's Taylor Rapp and Cole Beasley, or Mike Edwards, or Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards. Having those linebackers along with Taron Johnson and 2 veteran cornerbacks, and I'm considering Christian Benford a veteran now going into his 3rd season as the Bills starter. I think that we would have seen a lot more stability and a little bit more of a runway for those safeties to get their legs under them in Sean McDermott's defense and the important role that they play. Without Milano out there, and with Terrell Bernard probably needing to help Dorian Williams out a little bit, in terms of getting him up to speed, get awareness on a play-to-play basis. I think that a little bit more of the weight falls on the new safeties. But that said, I think until I see it, I am going to expect a Sean McDermott defense to be able to handle that next man up situation, replaceable parts. They've done it. And again, with the exception of it getting too much, I mean, it was just ridiculous. I remember talking to Terrell Bernard about it last season. The whole next man up mentality is admirable, but at some point, I mean, this is getting ridiculous with what the Bills were going through towards the end of the season, even with getting Daquan Jones back towards the end. I do. Anyways, I guess that's a lot of words I'm saying, to which I'm not I don't think you should be panicking. I don't know that this is going to affect the Bills' win total. I don't know that Vegas is not adjusting the win total down from 10.5. It is not going to probably change the point spreads on any of the games that Matt Milano is unavailable. The Bills have won without him. The defense has been very good without him. I think it just would have been obviously a very nice development for the Bills if they had a healthy Matt Milano, because it's very unusual for Matt Milano to be out there and healthy and you don't ever have to worry about it. I think he's just at that stage of his career. As I was referring to, with his age, the Bills are probably going to have a tough decision to make when it comes to Matt Milano, because, again, to borrow another old coaching cliche, the most important ability is availability.
Yeah, I think the new contract they gave him, I believe this past offseason or coming in this past offseason, is going to keep him on the roster beyond this season.
Probably
but
so.
This is a second year now of paying Matt Milano a lot of money and getting kind of a lost season out of him. And you can't predict injuries. You can't really control for that when you sign players to contracts, but that's a bad beat for the Bills that makes it hard to win when you're not getting all pro production from the players that you're allocating all pro salaries to. And I think it's the cumulative effect of a couple of things. One, just having in the same offseason, the same really day or week of the offseason, losing Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde if he doesn't ever come back, Tre'Davious White, now with a Matt Milano injury, uncertainty whether Von Miller is going to return to be the performer that he once was, not having Leonard Floyd in there in his place, the overall reduction in star talent on the Bills defense. Even if you can replace Matt Milano pretty well with Dorian Williams for 12 games and get Matt Milano, some version of Matt Milano back in the end, it just doesn't feel like you're going to get this defense back to the level it was at its best 2 years ago, or in its final form, which we never really saw with all of these different players. Sorry, I had to close out a video here that was drowning out my audio. But it's also the salary together. The Bills are already number 2 in the league in dead salary cap at over $60 million. They already have, not a lot, but $2 million worth of players on the injured reserve, Chase Claypool and Shane Buechele. You add Matt Milano's $12 million on top of that for the time that he's out, it's more than 25% of the salary cap devoted to players who aren't playing or players who aren't on the team. And it's very difficult, even with one of the very best quarterbacks in the league, to win at the highest level in the NFL when you're not getting anything out of 25% of your salary cap. And that's more than the Sabres decide not to spend on their salary cap. And some people think that's what keeps them out of the playoffs. So I don't think this is an injury that's going to drop the Bills to the bottom of the league, but it probably contributes to keeping them from getting to the top of the league, at least until Matt Milano's back out there on the field.
Not a salary cap math magician, but the Bills did buy out Chase Claypool off of injured reserve with a settlement. He is now a free agent. Quite frankly, I don't know what that does to the salary cap, but I'm sure
that gets that back. That gets that $1.5 million minus the settlement figure, whatever that kind of comes in at. But that's that's much less than 1% of the salary cap there.
So this is interesting, I think, anyway, especially since we're talking about weak side linebackers. You want to call them a will linebacker, like the Mike and the Will. I always just like to say middle and weak side because, jargon, one less piece of jargon. But anyway, the weak side linebackers behind Matt Milano heading into the Steelers game. This is what the Bills had on their depth chart. I think it's interesting because it's changed a little bit. Dorian Williams was 2. Local boy Joe Andreessen was 3rd on that depth chart. Then Edifuan Ulafosio was 4th on the depth chart, and then Shane Simon was 5th. Heading into the Steelers game, and this is with, let's see, I don't know if the Bills put this depth chart together before Milano is hurt, but definitely it came out yesterday or the day before. It was before we knew that there was an announcement that he was going to need surgery. So they juggled it a little bit heading into the Steelers game. I may have misspoke. Did I say going into the Steelers? Going into the Bears game. Let me just rephrase. Let me just reset real quick because I hate when sometimes I get a little spacey. Heading into the Bears game, the preseason opener, it was Milano, Williams, Andreessen, Olafosio, Simon. All right, in that order. Now heading into the Steelers game, it was Milano. They still have Milano on that depth chart. Dorian Williams, of course, he's still there, but Ulofoshio has gone up ahead of Joe Andreessen. He's now down a spot to the fourth, and then Shane Steinman stays at fifth. Now, if you're curious now, maybe the Bills juggle their linebackers a little bit. Nicholas Morrow is listed as the number 2 middle linebacker behind Terrell Bernard, and then Balin Spector and Deion Jones. Spector has moved up into the number 2 spot now behind Terrell Bernard. So they've done a little bit of massaging of those linebacker spots heading into Saturday night's game in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, just to clarify a couple points.
No, hang on. I misspoke again. It is still Bernard, Morrow, Spector, Jones. I'm sorry, I'm comparing here just to my Bears chart. Okay, so that stays the same. The Mike linebacker stays the same, but Ulofoshio is now ahead of Joe Andreessen. Something to be mindful of, given what's happened with Matt Milano. Sorry to get a little too granular there.
Yeah. Well, to get even more granular, Ulofoshio was hurt, didn't play in the first preseason game, so that might have affected how they did the depth chart for that first week, and now he's back to practice. Probably puts him back to where he would have been without the injury, but that might have been why Andreessen was ahead of him before. Balin Spector didn't practice today, and Sean McDermott said he's going to be out maybe a week, so he probably doesn't play in that preseason game. Nicholas Morrow has been dealing with an injury. I don't know if he's back to practice yet, but he hasn't been practicing a lot in the last few weeks, so his number of snaps that he can play in a preseason game is probably limited. So what I do think, one upshot of this is that it does create an opportunity for Joe Andreessen to get a lot more reps in the preseason, get on the field earlier in preseason games. And I don't think Joe Andreessen is going to make the 53-man roster, but his need on the practice squad and being a player that they're developing into a potential Matt Milano type replacement down the line becomes more secure. And with some injuries, he could be called up from the practice squad and playing for the Buffalo Bills at some point this season. That's a lot more likely now than it was before Matt Milano got injured.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see Dorian Williams on special teams.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, you need some linebackers to be able to play those special team snaps. And so, yeah, this is a glorious opportunity for the Lancaster High grad to make his mark with his hometown team. And also, like you say, whether it be sneak on to the 53-man roster or guarantee or secure lock down a spot on the practice squad, at least for development purposes.
And I'm sure Bills fans would love to hear this, but maybe they give AJ Klein a call and see if he wants to come out of retirement.
Look, they were gritting last year when they had to bring AJ Klein announced his retirement officially, I think 2 weeks ago, which probably means he hasn't been working out. I don't know how much he was working out last year, but yeah, I guess. But when in a pinch, when they really had no hope of finding somebody on the roster, AJ Klein was the best available option. I think right now on August 15th, you can bring in a bunch of different guys and teach him your system and have him perhaps ready to go in case you need to break glass for an emergency.
Well, what do you think is more likely to happen? AJ Klein getting back on the field as a linebacker for the Bills, or Kyle Sherman taking some snaps at quarterback? Shermer, I misspoke his name, but
you don't think the Nooch is going to just get all those reps?
I think he is, but maybe another injury and the Bills turn to the fourth quarterback in the building who's not on the roster, but he is the emergency practice quarterback at least.
One heartbeat away. They probably have a special wristband ready to go in Pittsburgh or for the finale before the regular season opens. No surprise about Chase Claypool. I mean, the guy barely practiced. He was hurt in the first training camp practice, and then I think hurt again in the third. I don't know. I didn't see much. I mean, everybody wanted to hope that he was going to be the reclamation project. I never really heard much good about him from people who had firsthand knowledge in both Pittsburgh and Chicago, and seemed to maybe wake up a little bit in Miami, embrace a special teams role, but I don't know. We didn't get to see much of him from out of Buffalo, but he had a $25,000 guarantee in his contract, which I guess that would get you a year of SUNY education, roughly, including your books. If you want to live on campus, I guess, maybe have a little bit left over for the student union, but it's not as though the Bills were overly committed to Chase Claypool there. So his injury settlement is not a surprise. Jonah, your thoughts are, again, we're so far removed from the Bears game. We're closer to the Steelers game than we were the Bears game. It was sloppy. I ended up not even writing off of that game. I think it was one of the more meaningless preseason games I'd ever seen. The starters didn't do much. I will say this. I just talked myself into another point to raise, and something that should be on everybody's minds heading into the game Saturday night. I had a handful of things that I would write about if they happened in the game. If Tyler Bass missed a field goal or two, I think that's something I would have written about. He ends up making both of his tries, but he's been erratic in practice this past week. He's missed some. And so heading into the Steelers game, I don't know. What are you looking at for the Steelers? What's on what has your antenna up regarding possible storylines based on what we see or don't see Saturday night?
Well, it's the second preseason game, so that should be the one that you judge the starters the most in, that they tend to get the most playing time now with the 3-game preseason structure and the game plan for it. I don't know, do they or don't they, but that was always the thing with the third preseason game. I think that was a factor in the first preseason game. It seemed like Chicago might have prepared a little bit more, whether it was Caleb Williams' first start and getting him rolling, or some things that maybe the defensive line under Eric Washington did against the Bills' offensive line. That seemed to be a little bit of a factor.
He's going to make you look bad. I mean, he's Caleb Williams, and he's the big swinging D for a reason. And you're not game planning to stop him, and you're running a vanilla defense. His escapability is going to make you probably look pretty stupid, unless he is so terrible that he's just off or nervous. He's got the jitters. But in basics, I mean, it was so basic that, of course, somebody like Caleb Williams is probably going to make your beige defense look bad.
Right. I think the Bears played harder, and not from an effort standpoint, but from a trying to win the preseason game and look good in the first preseason game.
They'd already had a preseason game too. A lot of people have discounted that. They had a game under their belts. So it was a little bit of a different situation for them.
So back to the second preseason game with the Steelers. This is maybe the week of the preseason where you do make the most judgments and can draw more conclusions than the first and especially the third preseason game. But the Bills looked very poor when they went to Pittsburgh in the preseason last year. They got thoroughly outplayed in all 3 phases in the first half, and it was, a mini crisis as far as preseason goes, and the Bills had to play some more starters in the third preseason game to kind of make up for that and get back in rhythm. And then when the two teams met in the postseason, and a lot had changed maybe between that time, the Bills were clearly a much better team. So I don't think you can draw too many conclusions either way for how it goes. But I think you would like to see Josh Allen and the offense put together a scoring drive and come out of the preseason with, some sort of positive, because it didn't really happen for them in the first preseason game. And I think the continued development of the chemistry between Josh Allen and Keon Coleman, whether he is going to be a starting receiver. He started the first preseason game, but Matt Collins was hurt. There's probably elements of the Bills offense that they're not going to show in the preseason. But if we see another game where Keon Coleman is out there for all the snaps with Josh Allen, which has been a trend throughout training camp, the further development of the pecking order of the Bills wide receivers and how high Keon Coleman is into that is probably the first thing I'll watch for in that preseason game.
I'm going to work on being able to say it without thinking it. Ulofoshio. We're probably going to see quite a bit of him and maybe learn a little something. I don't know. Joe Andreessen, of course, that'll be fun to watch. His development, it takes on a lot more meaning than just a good local story that it was a week ago. Now that Matt Milano's out, I think you've already mentioned that. Pre-snap penalties, of course, the sloppiness there, alignment stuff. I spent some time in Cleveland the past couple of days. That's one of the things that was a problem in the Browns controlled scrimmage or joint workout with the Minnesota Vikings over the last couple of days. they had officials in there, a lot of pre-snap sloppiness. I think it may just be a point of emphasis. So you're looking at refs who are taking a hard line look and being super nitpicky, which is good. I think that's healthy for your team. So I think we'll see the Bills on their P's and Q's a little bit more when it comes to pre-snap penalties. And if not, then that's a big red flag to me. If they know and it's aware. We saw Jonah practice on Monday, I believe it was. Sean McDermott stopped practice twice. He got it for his offense once that I saw, and it had to do with getting the play call in on time and with enough time to get to the line and be able to make adjustments. He stopped practice, turned off the music, barked at his offense, and I think by extension, Joe Brady in that regard for let's do it right. Let's get it in on time. And then during a red zone drill, he stopped it to yell at his second team defense, granted second teamers, but still, these are NFL players, about knowing the down and distance. I mean, Jesus. I mean, when your head coach in mid-August is upset that you're not paying close enough attention to your down and distance or being as sharp as you need to be in a red zone drill. So he's been getting into them a little bit from what I've seen. And so I think that is something that just to watch. And with the Sean McDermott outfit, I'd be surprised, at least mildly surprised, if the Bills look sloppy again. And when it comes to that type of stuff against the Steelers, but if they are, then I think then that's something to watch, definitely, and to worry about. I think it's something to worry about after a second game. First game, no. After 2 games, if it's a trend, then yes.
Yeah, the kick returner battle is still pretty wide open. Nobody distinguished themselves in the first game. KJ Hamler, Daquan Hardy, Andy Isabella.
Everybody just looks confused. Everybody looks confused as to what they're supposed to do. I think there's a rhythm to it. They need the reps in that regard. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, you're right. Fielding a punt inside the 5-yard line. In fact, I think it was at the 2 or whatever it was. It was not just at the 5. I mean, that was. Yeah, the Bills have some things to work out in their return game for sure.
And there's some roster mechanics there with how that affects wide receivers and cornerbacks. And then, if Ty Johnson, who is back from injury, I believe, if he's able to be the kick returner, he seems to be locked in on the roster as one of the 3 running backs. That creates some flexibility elsewhere if they don't need to keep some of these other players. So I think, and that storyline might move into the 3rd week of preseason, but that could be something to watch. If one of those guys has a big return this weekend on Saturday, it could crystallize that somewhat.
Well, Jonah, I know that a lot of people are probably just getting settled in for Tim Graham and Friends at the half hour or 40-minute mark, but this one needs to be a close one, or a quick one, I should say. And that's on me. I have a tight schedule here today before I head to Pittsburgh in the morning. And so please forgive us. We'll be back early next week with a follow-up podcast reviewing the Steelers game and also some this, that, and the other. Everything from college hoops to what's going on with UB football. We have a bunch of things that we've wanted to get to. Just don't have the time today, unfortunately. My apologies there. But thank you to everyone for checking out Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.
CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.